Well, representatives from Facebook, Twitter, and Google are back on Capitol Hill for a second day of testimony about Russia's interference in the 2016 election. Lawyers for the social media companies faced more tough questions. This coming from the Senate Intelligence Committee after testifying before Senate Judiciary Subcommittee yesterday. Well, today the lawmakers wanted to know how Russian-backed propaganda spread unnoticed to millions of Americans.
What we're talking about is a major foreign power with the sophistication and ability to involve themselves in a presidential election and sow conflict and discontent all over this country. We are not going to go away, gentlemen. And this is a very big deal. I went home last night with profound disappointment. I asked specific questions. I got vague answers. And that just won't do. You have a huge problem on your hands. And the United States is going to be the first of the countries to bring it to your attention, and others are going to follow, I'm sure, because you bear this responsibility. You've created these platforms, and now they are being misused. And you have to be the ones to do something about it. Or we will.
Michael Isikoff, chief investigative correspondent for Yahoo, joins me now. He's on Capitol Hill. Okay, Michael, boy, I found this testimony fascinating this morning, listening to the back and forth. What have you made of the testimony so far? And you saw that heated exchange with Dianne Feinstein.
Exactly. I mean, it's very clear that these three major social media companies, Facebook, Google, and Twitter, have not been able to mollify members of Congress who are quite upset that they didn't move, the companies didn't move more aggressively to police what was going on during the election on their platforms. I mean, Twitter has now revealed there was, something like 60,000 Russian bots tweeted 1.2 million times. 120 million Facebook users were exposed to Russian ads, and apparently the social media companies had no idea this was going on, and only began to move after they got the pressure put on from Congress. I thought one sort of theme that came out is Senator King, I think a couple of other senators mentioned, why is it the lawyers that are testifying today? Where are your CEOs? Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey. Why aren't they there? And I thought that was a question that's going to have some traction.
Do you get this? Do you buy this response from them that we just had no idea this was going on, no inkling whatsoever, our heads were buried in the sand?
Well, look, we know, for instance, and Twitter today confirmed it, that they were trying to sell ads to RT and Sputnik, election ads during the campaign. So they were focused on, like most companies, all companies, maximizing their profits, and they weren't terribly concerned about who was buying ads on their platform, who was posting stuff. I mean, these social media companies have been extremely reluctant to police any of content that gets posted on their platform. Their traditional stance for years has been, that's not our problem, that's not what we're here for. We're here to promote exchanges of information. We're not in the censorship business. And gradually they've had to come down from that, because first there was the big uproar about terrorist content being posted on their content. So they began very reluctantly and slowly to move to take measures to police that. But the Russian political invasion and penetration of their platforms was something they simply were not paying any attention to.
So, Michael, do they continue just self-policing themselves? You heard Dianne Feinstein come forward and say, we're going to do it if you don't get to the bottom of this. Where do you see this discussion going?
Well, you do have the threat of legislation. I think Senator Warner and Senator Klobuchar are sponsoring a bill that would at least regulate political ads on their on Facebook and the other platforms. I think that it's very likely some kind of legislation along those lines is going to pass, especially because at this point the companies themselves do not have the credibility to push back on Capitol Hill.
So, Michael, when you just mentioned earlier the terrorism component to all of this, if these ads could potentially affect an election or target an election, what are the other national security implications we should be concerned about with the ad buying?
Well, look, I mean, clearly the Russian influence campaign was a national security concern, something that the intelligence community spoke to quite forcefully. But even today, you saw a split among the companies, and I thought this was very interesting. Twitter trying to get out ahead of this hearing, and also knowing that it had its exposure because it was trying to sell ads, said they were going to ban RT and Sputnik, the two Russian propaganda networks, from its platform. The Facebook and Google lawyers were asked, "Will you do the same?" Today during today's hearing, and they said no, because we haven't found that there are violations of our terms of service on that. So I thought that was an interesting split among the companies themselves, and to be fair to them, there are a whole host of questions. Where do you draw the line? If you draw the line, if you're going to ban Russian content, do you ban Al Jazeera from taking ads on the content that's owned by the government of Qatar? There are lots of state-owned television and news media organizations. This can become quite tricky.
Michael Isikoff, Chief Investigative Correspondent for Yahoo. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.